I'm HonestlySarcasc, and this is the Hyperloops eRey Deck Tech Series, one of three. In this volume, we're going to look at eRey ePoe. In the next two volumes you can look forward to, you'll see eRey eHon and eRey Padawan Akbar. I take different approaches to the decks you would normally say, I guess. I tend to stay away from looking at lists online because I feel like they change my own mindset on things. Uh, Quick breakdown. So on eRey, we're going to have two sets of dice, and her dice are pretty questionable. Because let's say we're just rolling, no upgrades, no equips, anything. The odds of getting 1 to 3 damage is slim. You have it on one side, so to get 3, we have to hit 1 of each, which is tough. We've got a discard side, which for the most part isn't normally relevant. You can randomly, sack people, or depending on what's going on, like versus Dooku, it helps. And then you have the 2 resource side. With some compositions, the 2 resource side is pretty amazing, but there are going to be times where you're just going to roll up modifiers, and her dice did almost nothing. And then on the right side we've got Poe, and Poe he's like a Han Light, I guess is how I'd say it, but the special pretty much brings a bunch of fear, I guess is how I'd say it. Like in Han's situation, he has 2 disrupts and then an additional resource side instead of the special. Poe can come out of the woodworks with all sorts of things. If someone sees a special on his side, they're pretty much going to gun for it. So one of the innate things with this deck is that while you're playing it and rolling out dice, you force their hand on doing things that may not be appropriate. Like they don't know if you have a upgrade in hand you want to pitch that will do something ridiculous or not. But it's very interesting to say the least. I've had several games with it. I had so many incomplete games that I didn't pair this with some gameplay, but you can expect me to get some matches in recorded and walk through the deck and the options. So first we're going to go look at the upgrades. So we're going to scroll out, and we'll start with the main one. This deck I'm running 15 upgrades and 15 events, and it'll make sense once we get to the end of it. So the first 2 cards are Jedi Robes. It gives us the additional sustain via shields. We're looking to open with this because it'll make the resource sides on raised dice a bit better because we can outramp. The disrupt side can mess with the opponent. There's a lot of teams that have resource costs in them. So like Stormtroopers, the discard side of Dooku, the 3 damage side of Grievous, the 2 damage side of Kylo Ren, the 3 damage sides of Poes, the hired guns, Hans. There's just tons of stuff. So we hope to get this out at the beginning so we can help ramp up. And the focus allows us to set up to get more damage in, gain more resources, or just set up post specials. The second upgrade we're going to look at is Rey Staff. Even though it's unique, we have a full complement because this card right here pretty much single-handedly makes Rey's dice amazingly better, or pretty much amazingly better. Like because we have the 3 on this side, it kind of sets up like a Padawan. Because we got the 1/1/2 resource focus on the Padawan, and it helps Rey's dice just be better, so that the +2s aren't just always terrible. So pretty much these 4 cards are the ones you're looking to start with your opening, so that Rey becomes actually usable. Because you don't want to sit there trying to get post stuff and then Rey's dice are doing absolutely nothing. This one is an interesting card. It's Survival Gear. So most people don't really play it. I agreed with that up until about a week ago. I played in a box tournament, and a gentleman was playing Luke Akbar, and he had survival gear, and I saw it, and I kind of like turned my head sideways because we were both 3-0, and I was a bit confused. I figured maybe he played some soft matchups, yada yada yada, but he went away from the big expensive deck, and this card was just giving him tons and tons of sustain. So in this deck, the melee helps a bit with Rey, but you don't expect to get it. It's pretty much the focus and the shields that make it do its job. It helps sustain Rey, Poe, and then if you need to ramp up, you get the resource sides. And then because it has no blank side, it doesn't set you up for failure versus Failure Angers and any of the villain blue decks. Then we have Force Training. This card is kind of an enabler. Um, the one range on its thing will help set up for force misdirections. The +2 melee doesn't go amazingly well with just raised dice, but it becomes a force with raised staff. And in general, if you randomly do hit the raise 1x and that 2x, then you're going to be outputting massive amounts of damage. But really, for the most part, I think of the +2x as a blank without hitting the staff. But we get a focus side, which is amazing, another resource side so we can gas out, and then we have the special side, which pairs with our field, which, sorry I didn't talk about, is Emperor's Throne Room. It's so that when we claim, we can use pose dice, as well as using raised staff special for just dealing with opponent's dice, and then this side for shields, damage, or resource, 2 of the 3 that we want. Then we come over to Holdout Blaster, a perennial favorite of every deck with guns. Most of you do know by now that Rey's ability says when she gets an upgrade, she gets an additional action. So when you play Holdout Blaster, because it has ambush and you gain an additional action, you get 2. So it sets up kind of like tactical mastery. So you can go roll Poe, and then if you hit a special, you can special and like discard items or just roll out, get your damage in like your Django. So it's a helpful card to cheat Django setups in. Then we have One with the Force. This is essentially our second redeploy type item. Obviously can only play it on Rey, but none of our other items really force to go straight on Rey. Force training could be cast on Poe if we choose to. Just most of the time you're probably putting your first equips on Rey. So One with the Force, it's kind of weird because it's really just utility. But you got a 3 damage, 2 focus, 3 focus, the 3 disrupt, 2 shield, and 2 resource. No blinks again, just like survival gear. So survival gear is like a light version of One with the Force. It's really just its main thing is to focus your other dice to do massive amounts of damage, and sometimes you hit the 3 range. It disrupts, ruin your opponent as far as like the control matchups. The 2 shields help for sustain, and the 2 resources can help you gas out so that you can continue to play your events. Then we have Mind Probe. Both One with the Force and Mind Probe are pretty much our main things that we toss to Poe. Mind Probe sides are all very strong. You've got 3 range, 2 disrupt, 2 discard, and then the 2 specials that deal based on their hand. So normally speaking, if let's say you're planning to pitch the Mind Probe, you want to roll out Poe first. So if you do it, you can get max damage. Sorry about that red splotch in the bottom. I didn't notice that. And then, but I find myself a lot of time actually just casting Mind Probe on Rey if they're going, full after Poe. Because let's say Poe has like 4 or 5 damage on him, and you put a Mind Probe on Rey. If they don't switch targets, this Mind Probe's probably going to win on its own. Like, let's say you play relatively inefficient and you just start the match rolling Rey and then claiming Rey. That's 4 to 5 damage every turn, pretty much guaranteed. And you can actually just use the rest of your dice before claiming and still get like 2 to 3 damage off. It forces them to deal with this just like it did with Poe. It's very strong. As a one of, I have a Comlink. So overall, the card's not super amazing. It's kind of, actually, let's go move it up to what it looks like. It looks exactly like a 3rd Jedi Rogue, except instead of the disrupt, you're gaining the shield and then the extra ability. I haven't tried keeping it in the openings because it's really not good for that, but you get the setup where somewhere mid-late game you may not have the proper events to remove their dice. You overwrite something on Rey or cast it, and then you're getting the additional action after they reroll. So now with the changes, maybe you can then deal with their dice or whatever is going on, or at least just mess up everything they're attempting to do. Then we're going to get over to the events. I pretty much play what I would call control events normally, like all control events. So I'm just going to lay them out. We have 2 heroisms, 2 deflects. There's only 1 force misdirection for now, but I'm probably going to put that up to 2. 2 defensive positions. We have 2 mind tricks. So we're going to stop here for 1 second because Duggan doesn't actually deal with dice. So heroism's main thing is that if they're going after Rey, you can split some of the new damage onto Poe instead. It also messes with any of the gun decks that need to stack damage with modifiers. Just think of all those times like, E-Django, Ibala, Stormtrooper, they're re-rolling to try to get the base because they already hit modifiers on their guns and different things. So like deflects already set them back, and then heroisms are you just eat base, and that they may not be able to get any damage in at all. It works versus melee too. Not too often as far as like the additionals, but just switching the damage over, or opponent rolls a force throw, hits the one range. You take the one damage to Poe or Ray just so that they can't try to re-roll it into their special. Same things apply for any of the other items you may be scared of that have a damage side. That you're fine with taking that, but you don't want the re-rolls to come out and change things. Deflects pretty much in every blue deck because guns are the main meta. Force misdirection is only a one of, primarily because the raised dice have the two melee sides, so it's a blowout versus the melee decks, but you can't really do too much with it usually versus the gun decks, save for hitting the random range on Mind Probe, Force Training, or one with the Force. So that's why I have it as one for now, but there are a lot of melee decks, Vader Raiders, the Dooku decks, and even if just hitting resources, if you're playing as something like Han Rey, they have two resource sides on each die. So you could probably get rid of 2 or 3 dice with this card, and it'll set them way back for the turn. Defensive position is probably the best red event next to Duggan, and that's only because Duggan's neutral. Defensive position causes so many bad situations to turn into blowouts. People roll the God roll and they hit 2 range plus 2 modifier plus 2 modifier, and you're just like, wow, I'm looking at 6, and then all of a sudden it's all gone. You do have to get battlefield control, but with this deck, that's usually what you're looking for. You're a 2-character deck, so you don't dirtle as much as the 3 and 4-character decks. In the 2v2 matchups, you may not have it all the time, but that's fine because they might have to claim to deal with that. We come under Mind Trick. A lot of people don't run it. It's a neutral card, and you pretty much never see it in villain at all, even in mono blue, which I find kind of weird because most people are just bad. If we look at Mind Trick specifically, it says spot a blue character to force an opponent to split their dice into 2 groups of any size. Then you choose one group and remove all dice in it. So if they have 3 dice, you can either A, kill their best dice, or kill their other 2 dice. If they're doing the thing where they have multiple upgrades and they're rolling all their guys out before they pitch to reroll, which is what most people do, this card becomes a blowout. They have, somewhere probably between 4 and 8 dice, and now this is killing 4 dice. Or let's say they kept 3 good dice together and then the other 5. You can just eat the other 5 and have them do whatever they're doing, and they're pretty much done for their turn. It's bonkers, and I'm going to continue running it as a tool, especially in this deck. Like, it's relatively expensive, but after the 2nd or 3rd turn, you really don't cast any more equips, or sorry, round. And the main thing is that you don't have to cast your stuff. You have Poe to throw them if you need to. So now we'll get into the next section. This isn't this isn't dice mitigation as much as damage mitigation. So we have a Duggan and a defensive stance. The reason I split them is because I didn't want to be completely stuck on if I don't have the battlefield, I lose. Defensive stance is a little bit weaker, but it's consistent, and the Duggans will let me split the shields between the 2 of them. I'm testing them as a 1 and a 1 for now, but I could see if at a point my concern is battlefield control, and possibly even switch the Duggan to a 2nd defensive stance. It's unlikely, but it's very possible, just because, like, let's say I start with the Jedi robes. I always want to cast it on Rey because I plan to upgrade through her. So then if I dug in, I can put her at 3 and then Poe at 2, and there's all sorts of stuff going on. Then we have Field Medic. It's one of the strongest events in the game as far as like healing, or I think it's the only heal as far as I know besides willpower. Hero's the only one that can remove damage from themselves. When you're playing most of those villain matchups, the backup muscles, the little points of range like that this completely ruins them. They're expecting a certain amount of stuff to happen, then they're going to be like, okay, well, maybe I claim and then do a special on a lightsaber and kill the guy. People have plans, and Field Medic ruins this. This is about equivalent to casting an electroshock on something that deals 2 damage. It's not the same because you don't get to stop and like not let them do modifiers, but it's much better in that while you're gaining shields, instead of just being capped out at 3, you get to just straight heal the damage. So essentially, the way I think of these is 2 damage mitigation. Defensive shields can be 2 damage mitigation, but you can still get run into intimidate and on the hunt, or even the people that run a first order TIE fighter. Same with Duggins. Like shields are not the end all be all. You can run into Kylo's lightsaber. So field medics are amazing there, and that's where willpower comes in as well. It's a 2-point damage swing. Field medic takes off 2, willpower takes off 1 and gales them 1, or just technically moves because it avoids the shields. It's very strong because of that. So this is our 15 card event layout. It either kills dice or gives us shields to stop damage, or just heals us all at once. So overall, like, the deck's been playing very strong. I think I lost like 1 match. A lot of it was due to my own mistakes, but this is pretty much it. This thing's great. If you have any questions, feel free to leave any comments, and I will get back to you guys. Thank you.